Good day, friends. I'm Kerry Dillinger. This is Bible Class Topics, and today we continue our study, Knowing God, Lesson 12, Part 2 of 2. If you missed Lesson 1, we'll put a link to it in the description below. Our need for propitiation. Our purpose, understanding the heart of the gospel. Please study with me for just a few minutes, and we will conclude with that very same statement. Propitiation is the heart of the gospel. Here's a summary of Lesson 1. Biblical propitiation is God's gracious answer to sin, not a pagan-style attempt to bargain with unpredictable gods. God's wrath is holy, moral, just, and directed against sin. Christ's sacrifice turns away God's righteous wrath, removes guilt, and satisfies divine justice. Propitiation and expiation belong together. Christ both removes sin and reconciles sinners to God. In his book Knowing God, J.I. Packer argues that God's wrath is real, personal, and righteous. God's wrath is not irrational, sinful, or merely impersonal consequences. In this lesson, we'll discuss the fact that propitiation is the work of God Himself. The death of Jesus Christ is what made propitiation for sin. Propitiation manifests God's righteousness. The gospel then solves a fundamental problem. The driving force in the life of Jesus Christ will be revealed in this lesson, and examining the Old Testament rituals that Christ came along and single-handedly replaced. And our conclusion, Christianity without propitiation is not Christianity. We'll begin with three important facts. Three very important facts about propitiation, beginning with propitiation is the work of God Himself. I'll point you to Romans 3, verses 21 and 24. It shows that justification is God's gift of grace, not something sinners achieve by their own effort. And then the Apostle John, in his first letter, chapter 4, verses 7 through 9, shows that propitiation begins with God's love. God sent His Son so that sinners might live through Him. This is an important point because it means salvation is not humanity trying to persuade a reluctant God to be merciful. Instead, it's God Himself taking the initiative to satisfy His justice and to show His love. Another fact we need to be aware of, the death of Jesus Christ is what made propitiation for sin. In Galatians 3:13, we see teaching that Christ became a curse for us. And in 2 Corinthians 5:14 and verses 18 through 21 teaches that God reconciled sinners to Himself through Christ, who was made sin for us. This is important because sin requires judgment, and Christ's death is the once-for-all sacrifice that fulfills what the Old Testament Day of Atonement pictured. Unlike the repeated animal sacrifices of the Old Testament, Jesus' death actually accomplishes reconciliation by bearing the judgment sinners deserve. And the third point we want to make here as we open our lesson, an important point, an important fact, propitiation manifests God's righteousness. Back to Romans chapter 3, now verses 25 through 26, these verses explain that God presented Christ as a propitiation to demonstrate His righteousness, showing He does not overlook sin, but deals with it justly. Acts 14, verse 17, shows that God has always given witness to his goodness, while Romans chapter 2, the first 16 verses, teaches us that God judges all people impartially according to truth. And then Romans 4 and verse 25 shows that Christ was delivered up for our trespasses, and he was raised for our justification. This is important because the cross proves that God is both just and the justifier. God punishes sin, upholds his moral law, and still provides mercy for sinners through Christ. The gospel solves a fundamental problem, and that problem is the problem of God's wrath against human sin. Humanity's deepest need is not merely ignorance, weakness, guilt feelings, or lack of purpose, but the fact that sinners stand under the righteous judgment of a holy God. The gospel of Christ solves this central problem through propitiation. By his death, Jesus bears the judgment sinners deserve. He turns away God's wrath. He satisfies divine justice, and he reconciles believers to God. Once this central problem is dealt with, every other gospel blessing, such as peace, forgiveness, adoption, assurance, holiness, and hope, flows from it. When we see the truth of propitiation, it helps us to understand the driving force in the life of Jesus was indeed his obedient love for the Father and his saving love for sinners, moving him deliberately toward the cross, where God's wrath would be turned away. It also clarifies the destiny of those who reject God because Christ, if Christ, propitiation, if Christ's propitiating sacrifice is refused, there remains no other covering for sin. The sinner continues under God's righteous judgment. Propitiation explains God's gift of peace, because peace with God is not merely a feeling, but the objective result of wrath being satisfied and reconciliation being accomplished through Jesus Christ. It reveals the dimensions of God's love because God did not ignore sin or wait for humanity to repair the breach, because humanity could not repair the breach. God gave his own Son to bear the judgment that every sinner, including yourself and myself, deserve. Propitiation shows the meaning of God's glory, because at the cross, God's holiness, justice, wrath, mercy, love, and faithfulness are all displayed together in perfect harmony. And now we'll circle back to the Old Testament and talk about 5 Old Testament rituals that are related to New Testament propitiation. These would include the sin offering, the guilt offering, the burnt offering, sprinkling of blood, and especially, in the context of our study, the Day of Atonement. These practices showed that sin brought guilt and judgment before a holy God, but that God graciously provided a way for atonement through substitutionary sacrifice. The blood of the offering represented life given in a place of the sinner, while the Day of Atonement most clearly pictured both the covering of sin and the turning away of God's wrath. Together, these rituals taught that forgiveness required God's appointed sacrifice and pointed forward to the final, complete propitiation accomplished in Jesus Christ. The sin offering was given for unintentional sins and ceremonial uncleanness, showing that sin defiles the worshiper and requires atonement before a holy God. The blood of the sacrifice was applied to the altar to make atonement and restore the sinner's relationship with God. I'll draw your attention to Leviticus, and here, chapter 4, the first 35 verses. The guilt offering dealt with specific offenses that involve guilt, desecration of holy things, or harm done to another person. It emphasized not only sacrifice for sin, but also restitution, showing that wrongdoing must be atoned for and, when possible, repaired. Also Leviticus, this time chapter 5:14 through chapter 6, verse 7. The burnt offering was completely consumed on the altar, symbolizing total dedication and surrender to God. It also made atonement for the worshiper, teaching that sinful people could approach God only through his appointed sacrifice. Leviticus 1, verses 3 through 17. The sprinkling or application of blood was central to Old Testament atonement, because blood represented life given in the place of the sinner's life. Through the blood, purification and atonement were made, pointing to the seriousness of sin and the necessity of substitutionary sacrifice. And once again, Leviticus, this time chapter 17, verse 11, and also see Exodus 24, verses 6 through 8. That brings us to the Day of Atonement, Israel's most important annual atonement ritual. This is when the high priest entered the most holy place and sprinkled blood on the mercy seat for the sins of the people. The ritual also included the scapegoat, which symbolically carried Israel's sins away, showing both propitiation, that is, God's wrath turned away, and expiation, the sin being removed. And here you can study Leviticus chapter 16, verses 1 through 34. With these things in mind, let's turn back to our New Testament. What is then the heart of the gospel? J.I. Packer asks in his book, has the word propitiation any place in your Christianity? At this point in our study, I suspect those of us that have dug deep realize this is a rhetorical question. Propitiation is central to the New Testament faith because it explains God's love. It explains Jesus coming to the earth in human form. It explains the meaning of the cross. It explains Christ's heavenly intercession, and it explains the plan of salvation. Any gospel without propitiation at its heart is another gospel, a different gospel. And as Paul told the Galatians in chapter 1, verse 8, these other gospels are to be condemned, a Greek word meaning accursed, outcast, damned. That brings our lesson to a close. We hope that these thoughts have been helpful in tying up the things that we needed to say about propitiation in Lesson 1, and now we've concluded Lesson 2. I'll put a summary of Lesson 2 in the description below. We appreciate your attendance here today, and those of you that watch regularly will note that I did not appear again on camera today because I'm still fighting a very painful sty in my right eye, and I'm hoping it will clear up in the very near future. I have sought medical attention. Can you come back and study with us again in just a day or two? We hope to post another lesson from Bible class topics. Let's keep everybody in our prayers. Let's keep studying our Bibles. Until we meet again, may God bless.